Brian Salvatore, LSUS professor and environmental crusader. Hey, Mr. Brian, how are you this morning?
Yes. Hi, Robert.
So what do you speculate, and I know it's all speculation at this point, what do you, because you know this situation as good as anybody, what do you think might have gone wrong? What do you think happened?
So things are a lot different there in terms of what's on site compared to 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was about 10 million pounds more of things and a lot different stuff than just M6. And so what exploded in 2012, almost 4 years ago, was not likely M6. But today, if it did involve one of the bunkers, then it's almost certainly the M6 or the clean burning igniter, which is the only other thing there. But those are very similar things. They're nitrocellulose, and really, if it's out in the open, it doesn't explode. It does what's called deflagrate. It burns very fast. But if it's in a confined chamber, like inside of a bunker, then it can truly be an explosion.
During the day, there are workers out there handling this stuff. So if I can just extrapolate just a little bit, worst case scenario, but for the grace of God, if this had happened, say, at noon today, somebody could have been injured.
That's true. They work, the burn chamber operates 24 hours a day, but according to Ms. Reynolds, this was at least 2 miles away from there. So that's where the storage bunkers are. The most of the storage bunkers are over there, well away from where the burn chamber is. So they are transporting this material day in and day out on hopper cars. And they're in those bunkers one at a time, and they do have to get in there and organize and move things out. So it may have been a bunker. I really don't know. I did talk with Colonel Stuckey briefly, and he told me he was on his way in.
Brian, we're talking to Brian Salvatore. You and I we've talked before about how this material does get more volatile the longer it sits, but it's being stored where that might not be an issue right now. Is that accurate or no?
No, it is gradually decaying. There is a stabilizer in the M6. It's called diphenylamine, and it's only present in the amount of 1%. And so as time passes on, as it's absorbing the degradation products, it itself is becoming degraded. So when all the stabilizer is gone, you have practically almost pure nitrocellulose with those other components in there, and about 10%, the things like the dinitrotoluene, the dibutyl phthalate, those are the environmental toxins that the citizens were so concerned about. But the stabilizer becomes deactivated, and it's never there. I wish they would have put 2 or 3% stabilizer in there, I guess, because
they might want to rethink that now.
Well, this material is obsolete. They really don't use M6 anymore, but this stuff's from 40 years ago.
Brian, based on what you know, the way it's being handled, the way that the burn is being conducted, the way it's being stored, are you surprised that this happened?
Well, it's not surprising that there would be something like this, although I was hoping that they had gotten all of that unstable material. When they would go into some of those bunkers, they could smell amine smells, and they could definitely tell that this area was an area they had to prioritize. But when you go into something where you got 1 million pounds stacked in such a small area, well, some of these bunkers had 500,000 pounds in them stacked in such a small volume, it is hard to assess it. It's even the professionals from the Chemical Explosive Safety Board, they had trouble and they were concerned, and they came from Washington.
How long before all this is disposed of, Brian? What's the clock on now?
And part two to that, pardon me, is this going to slow down or in any way alter the schedule of the propellant destruction?
Well, I've been keeping up with the Citizens Advisory Group, and they have monthly meetings, and I'd encourage more citizens to attend that in Doyling. But their last report was that the material was about 40% gone. So that means we're almost halfway now, and with that in mind, I would say that it will be all gone by about the 1st of April next year.